I'm just testing the audio for a second. I'm just testing the audio for a second. Okay, I just heard myself. Now let me get back to my own stream. Now let me get back to the. Okay, so I think we're ready to go back to talking about what we're doing. Jeffrey Allen Johnson is here. Arjun is here. J-Man Truth Seeker is here. Mike's working good. How you doing, buddy? Looking nice, wide awake, I see. Yeah, I think I was actually at my JKD class, which is, and I pretty much got my ass kicked. Probably I shouldn't have worked out yesterday, so my entire torso was hurting. So I don't think I'm going to be going to sleep for another hour. And hopefully by then this installment of the Bold Quick Take will be over, and I will have tired a little. The thing is, so a couple things are very important. Tomorrow, 3:30 Eastern Time, 12:30 Pacific Time. For those of you around the world, I don't give a shit. Arjun, that'll probably be, let me see, 1 a.m. for you. Hope you can manage it. So we're having two Bernie Sanders delegates at the DNC. They're going to be guesting again with us and talking about the Russian collusion narrative. I think Arjun's actually familiar with that already. Me and him have discussed it. They're going to be talking about all the smear campaign that I've been talking about with the Mideast file. And we're going to be going into it with a little more detail than I have in the past. Hopefully a little more stuff to shed light on it. Anyway, there's a few topics I want to discuss just for today because, it's important not to let some of these important topics, slip by or people can, they can assume that I think something and it's just not true. So the Iran nuclear deal is over as far as the U.S. is concerned. The fact is, though, that there are other countries that will continue to abide by it. And that's probably Germany would be the best example. And in my opinion, one of the reasons is because Germany, if you really, I think that they have been supplying military equipment to Iran, and they're going to continue to do it. Maybe a different day I'll feature some of the stories about that. I mean, that's the way things are done around the world. Agreements are made to be broken. It's not like I'm trying to call Germany out on it specifically. I'm just saying they're full of shit. So, that's why I think that they're opposed to the agreement. Russia obviously is not happy, but I mean, Russia is very upfront that they're a pro-Iran country. And people like to object to that. People that I know that are, from the AIPAC crowd, they like to complain about Russia being on Iran's side. But they don't realize that Russia has its own geopolitical interests in the Middle East that don't line up with the U.S. and don't line up with the Israelis or the Egyptians or the Turks. And, I mean, you just have to accept sometimes that not everybody's your friend. And I still think that the agreement was bullshit, and I fully understand why Donald Trump didn't want to abide by it and is pulling out, and he's saying it very publicly. So Berlin seeks a way to safeguard. This is from Sputnik News, by the way, which I don't really read that often, and I don't have an opinion either way. I know they have some communists as their radio hosts, which I think they're kind of trolling them. They're like, it's just these Russians who run the station. They're probably listening to all the communist rhetoric in their offices, and they're like, hey, Dima, they're talking about dictatorship of proletariat again. Let's do another shot. They're doing shots every time that or the democracy of the people's democracy, whatever the hell they talk about, those Marxists. Next Tuesday also, probably going to have another stream with Sun Fei-yang about Marxism, according to Abby Martin and Richard Wolff. I dug up a clip from 2016 because Richard Wolff is like suddenly prowling around. I'm Richard Wolff, the Marxist. I'm going to prove that capitalism is about to fall apart. You know, we'll see exactly how much sense he makes, because I dug up a clip from 2016 that I don't think that he's. I think if you watch the clip, it doesn't make much sense. Berlin seeks a way to safeguard the Iran nuclear deal, formerly known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or as I call it, GAB.AI, as its suspension may lead to an alarming situation in the Middle Eastern region. German Foreign Minister Heiko Maas said on Monday. And then he says in a tweet, which is in German, but they translated, the situation in the Middle East would become much more dangerous without the nuclear agreement with #Iran. The G7 are therefore jointly looking for solutions to safeguard the GAB.AI, Maas said, as quoted by the German Foreign Ministry on Twitter. The G7 Foreign Ministers meeting is currently underway in Toronto. U.S. President Donald Trump has repeatedly criticized the GAB.AI, or JCPOA, which was negotiated by the previous U.S. leader Barack Obama's administration. On January 30th, the U.S. leader asked Congress. I don't like the way they write. I mean, I'm sorry, but you know, I hate to be nitpicky. I just think they write like shit here, because they say every time the U.S. leader, it's the President of the United States, asked Congress to address the flaws in the deal. 2 weeks earlier, Trump had announced that he would waive sanctions on Tehran as required under the GAB.AI for the last time. Okay, yeah. The United States is expected to announce its decision on the agreement before the May 12th deadline. On July 14th, 2015, the European Union, Iran, and the P5+1 group of countries, Russia, China, France, the United Kingdom, the United States, and Germany, signed the GAB.AI to ensure the peaceful nature of Iran's nuclear program. Under this agreement, Iran pledged to not seek to develop or acquire nuclear weapons in exchange for the lifting of sanctions imposed against Iran. So let me see what you guys are saying. Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Arjun. Jeffrey Allen Johnson says, looked like Bibi lit that ass up outside Damascus. He said they intercepted missiles, but that was one hell of a fire. And, you know, I just saw something about that, and I have to look in. I heard something about that before I went on the air. So I think we're actually still behind now. T. Hamilton, welcome back. Thanks for joining us. I know that he is probably not enthused about the situation. I think Hamilton is a bit more on the, dare I say, the narco-capitalist side. So is this supposed to be a good thing? Anytime that you're having missiles lobbed across an international border, for whatever reason, it's not really a cause to cheer. It's a cause for anxiety. Okay, unless you're one of the people who's privy to that and you know that you're going to win. So I'm also a bit skeptical that this is a good development as far as the war. And you know, when people say, "Oh, Netanyahu, he's got the right thing," and you know, he stole all the intelligence from Iran. No, I think it's good to be at least a little skeptical. First of all, he does have credibility issues. He's the boy who cried wolf. A lot of people think so. Says all the time, 24/7, talks about Iran. No, I don't take Netanyahu's word for it that he has conclusive evidence of it, because I don't have access to that information. You know, I can't go and access that archive. You can't go and access that archive. Most of us, I'm assuming, Arjun would probably be the only person in the room who could conceivably have learned Persian, since there are communities in Iran that speak Persian, and I very much doubt it, because he's not from that part of India. Or no, yeah, he's from India. Sorry. So there are communities within India that I think speak Parsi, or one of the dialects of the Persian language. So if you have these documents in the Persian language, and I mean, Bibi put on this presentation, and it's this huge spectacle where he's pulling curtains off shit and whatever. And the bottom line is, you can try as hard as you want. You still need people to be able to believe in the information as it's presented. And it's hard. It's hard, man. I just can't do it. I have to be the skeptic, even with Bibi. It was a message sent: get the 80,000 troops out of the Golan Heights. Now, once again, this is what we're told. Who knows? So he says, but regardless, if you've ever seen a missile strike from any sort of artillery, you wouldn't be cheering Bibi for launching them. So I'm not sure what type of argument's going on between you guys, but the point is here, okay? I didn't believe in the nuclear agreement anyway. However, the fact that people are cheering this on as being a good development is I mean, we're really taking a gamble here as the United States, and I'm sorry for people who they're, the neocons and the Ralph Peters and David Frums of the world who say, oh, we have to fuck up every country that doesn't like us. No, you have to, first of all, you have to pace yourself. And we just got done fucking up in Iraq and Afghanistan and Libya and Yemen and at times in places in South America. And I'm frankly tired of it, and I'm not really feeling this whole thing about the urgency of going to war again. Now, if you can use this type of assholery, to bully Iran into conceding things, then that's just good gamesmanship. I mean, we'll have to see if that actually happens. So we got Hamilton. I'll get back to you in a second. Arjun Sinha says, is it clear why Israel is launching missiles into Syria? No, I actually have no clue why. I just saw for a second that it happened. And then Hamilton is talking about these ISIS radicals. Well, he's saying Obama, Saudi Arabia, and Bibi not funding them. There's no proof that Bibi funded the ISIS radicals. There's no proof of him funding them. I think there's proof of him giving medical aid to a lot of these Sunni, quote unquote, moderate rebels that are in Syria. So he's giving the medical aid, and the transparency of this whole effort leaves something to be desired. So, we can laugh at Hamilton for being, a conspiracy theorist or something, or we can address the reality, which is that these people who are talking about intervention in either Syria or Iran they're simply not transparent. And those of us that, and I remember from high school the work up to the Iraq invasion. We were being fed a lot of information that we really couldn't process. And, I mean, we're not able to absorb documents in Arabic. So, back then, a lot of us, especially in high school, we'd never had the US be at war for more than a few weeks. Like I think the longest before that we were at war that I was alive, that I was conscious of, was the Kosovo, because the Persian Gulf War, I was probably 6 years old when it happened. So, and then Hamilton also says Israel doesn't give a shit about any nuclear treaties. Well, I was having an argument with Jamal Thomas earlier on his show. I called him up, and his show is good. It's a progressive show, but it's a good show. And he gives kind of a moral argument there that who is Israel to judge if other countries want to get nuclear weapons, including Iran? And the issue I have with that is I'm not making a moral argument. I'm saying that a strategic argument is this, the more countries there are with nuclear weapons, and we're conceding the point that Israel does have nuclear weapons. No conspiracy weapon there, the Blue Lantern report, following the agenda of destabilization in the Middle Eastern countries. You're going to have to send me some information on that, but I'll try to read it, but I'm sorry, man. I'm not really, I don't think I'm on the same side as you are. But look, the issue here is that nuclear proliferation is governed by the NPT. Arjun says, as the stream is live, Trump is on TV here speaking about pulling out of the Iran deal. So, no, but that already happened. So, I mean, I wouldn't worry about that, Arjun. Let me see here. So, Wesley Clark, Blue Lantern report. No, Hamilton, you're just going to have to send me something later. So, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. I'm sorry. You know. I mean, I can only prepare for what I know about. I can't go on the air. Okay, so Wesley Clark, 7 countries. Here we go. So, wars were planned, 7 countries in 5 years. Let me look at Global Research Canada. No, wrong one. So this is from Mint Press News. So Mint Press News is a pro-Iran outlet. So let's look at that one anyway. Iran, Libya, Lebanon, Syria, Somalia, Sudan, and Iran. Now, let me point out something when you look at this, okay? So I want you to, I'm going to highlight this and look at the 7 countries and tell me this. What's the flaw that you see in this argument, okay? I'll give you a couple minutes, okay? I know, just a funny coincidence. He's talking about so the Greater Israel Project. Yeah, I thought that he was talking about this. Now, what's the flaw in mentioning Somalia? Okay, if you're really going to use them in the same breath as the other 6 countries, okay? Hamilton, you have like, if you need 2 minutes to respond to that question, then I mean, just let me know, because it should really give you a red flag right there. Persian Gulf control. What does that have to do with Somalia? They haven't had a government since 1992. So technically, they could just march in there and take it over anyway. And they've been in and out of there for years. So what does that have to do with Somalia? Somalia, the U.S. could have. I mean, they have been involved in there since like the 90s. So look, and then Lebanon. Lebanon also, I would say, has. I mean, look at one of the issues with Lebanon. So he's saying Persian Gulf control. Lebanon is on the Mediterranean coast. It doesn't have anything to do with the Persian Gulf. So that's another issue. Now, there is a tug of war going on in Lebanon between the Syrians and the Iranians. But, you know, the fact of the matter is that Iran is committing acts of terror in Lebanon, just like the Saudis are committing acts of terror in Syria. So, I mean, are you saying that you think that this whole thing is to blame on Saudi Arabia and Israel? Because, you know, you realize it does take 2 to tango here. If you're trying to argue that we should be not involved in the Middle East, then I think we're both in agreement here. But I think that the whole 7 nations thing with Wesley Clark is an exaggeration. You know, but I could be wrong. You obviously know a little more about that than me. So we'll have to leave that for a different time. Anyway, the pulling out of the agreement is very crucial, I think, to one thing, which is asserting that the United States is really going to address all of the issues on the table in this Middle East tug of war in order to extract our forces from there. And that's my argument. Terrorism is on both sides. You'll have to watch the Wesley Clark video. Hey, Jim, so I didn't expect you to be up. What was I going to say? Look, so the JCPOA, the joint conference, what was it called? Hamilton got me off my train of thought. Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. Yeah, that plan was bullshit. Anybody who's supporting the Iran nuclear deal has to understand that whether or not you agree that there should be war with Iran, which I don't believe that there should be a war with Iran, and I hope that you don't cut up the video to say that, oh, he actually admitted to. No, I don't believe that there should be a war with Iran. Not in this, not the way things are right now. The point is that the agreement itself was not going to accomplish anything. The agreement itself actually delineated, certain loopholes that allowed Iran pretty much to continue to develop nuclear weapons anyway. So those of you saying, oh, who cares if they develop nuclear weapons or whatever, who cares if Iran goes on and they develop a nuclear weapon? Okay, if that's the argument you want to make, if you want to make a moral argument for that, why do you even need an agreement? Why do you even need or those people who are saying, how do we know that they were trying to develop a nuclear weapon? Well, if they entered an agreement where there's no monitoring and you're not able to go and inspect their facilities, and they're saying, oh, but we'll still agree not to develop a nuclear weapon. No, yes, they were originally trying to develop a nuclear weapon. And they also, let me see here. I think this was from 2013. So, or 2017. Did Iran's ballistic missile test violate a UN resolution? So in the days leading up to today's announcement of additional U.S. sanctions on Iran, the U.S. and Iran have made claims and counterclaims as to whether Iran's ballistic missile test on Sunday violated a UN Security Council resolution and the 2015 nuclear deal between Iran and 6 world powers, including the U.S. So this was, now remember, this wasn't this week. This was in February 2017. And this is from NPR, which is not exactly the neocon darling, so far as I know. Iran's Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif tweeted that Iran is unmoved by U.S. threats and has the right to defend itself. So did Iran violate the agreement or not? Most non-proliferation experts would say Iran certainly defied the spirit of the UN resolution, but technically didn't violate it. That's, again, that's the importance of a treaty. What does the language actually say? Because if the language is not binding, then there's no way for them to violate it. And therefore, the agreement doesn't even matter. It's basically, it is a scrap of paper, as Adolf Hitler actually said. Not that I'm comparing them to Adolf Hitler. I'm just saying that's what he used to say. That's what he said about the Munich Agreement in 1938. There's certain things that people sign and they're like, yeah, I'm going to sign. I'm definitely going to, I'm going to, what do they say? To have and to hold till death do us part. What do they say then? And then they end up poisoning their wife or something. So yeah, people enter into agreements all the time that they don't give a fuck about. So I mean, that's all I'm saying. I'm not trying to tell us to go to war with Iran. I'm just saying the agreement doesn't mean shit. I mean, are you going to argue with me about that? So here's what the 2 resolutions say on the subject, with highlighting added. UN Security Resolution 1929 from 2010 says the Security Council decides that Iran shall not undertake any activity related to ballistic missiles capable of delivering nuclear weapons, including launches using ballistic missile technology, and that states shall take all necessary measures to prevent the transfer of technology or technical assistance to Iran related to such activities. Now, that was the old one. That was from 2010. Now, in 2015, passed after the agreement, Resolution 2231. Now that's GAB.POA. It terminated the provisions of the 2010 resolution, so that's not binding anymore. And added language deep in one of the annexes saying Iran is called upon not to undertake any activity related to ballistic missiles designed to be capable of delivering nuclear weapons, including launches using such ballistic missile technology until the date 8 years after the GAB.POA adoption day, or until the date on which the IAEA submits a report confirming the broader conclusion, whichever is earlier. As diplomatic terms of art, shall not, which appeared in the 2010 resolution, represents a clear and enforceable prohibition, whereas being called upon not to do something is more ambiguous. Here's one way to look at it. When Iran tested ballistic missiles in the fall of 2015 while Resolution 1929 was still in effect, it was doubtless in violation of a Security Council strictures. So they were already, those of you that are yelling all the time about, oh, UN resolution against, this state, especially, usually they say about Israel. Well, Iran violated a resolution in 2015 against, talking about the missile launches. So, if you're so hard, if you have such a huge erection for the UN resolutions and you think that they're so important, then they already violated it before the agreement was signed. Now, in this case, what the UN did, this is what you have to understand. All the agreement did was actually make the rules softer so that they can just test the missiles anyway. And then they're not violating the agreement. Conservative critics of the nuclear agreement argued strongly against the language change, calling it a dangerous watering down of the international position on Iran's ballistic missile program. Iran has long maintained that its missiles don't violate Security Council resolutions because there are no nuclear warheads involved, and Iran's conventional defenses are its own business. But both the 2010 and 2015 resolutions do warn against testing missiles that, quote, could be capable of carrying a nuclear weapon. So look, the question is, are these capable of carrying a nuclear warhead? If Iran didn't test missiles capable of carrying a nuclear warhead, then the agreement itself could technically still be valid. But as it stands, I'm saying valid in spirit. I'm not saying valid in terms of legality. In terms of legality, I don't know if I don't know if it can be proven that they violate it because the rules are too soft. There's no point in actually entering into a contract if the rules are not enforceable. Let me see here. So I'm about to move off of the subject. What are you guys doing here? Lots of news in the world the last 2 days, almost can't keep up. Hamilton, yeah, those currency crises, yeah, it's kind of messed up, and we're gonna have to go back to that. And I'm certainly worried financially for many reasons, not just because of the currencies. So Hamilton also says, if everyone watched that nuclear time-lapse video of all the documented nuke tests throughout history, it will scare the shit out of people, not enough to not let these children with pens control so many. Well, I'm not sure who I think he's talking about nuclear, like leaders, world leaders. Well, then you would be making the argument that Iran shouldn't have a nuclear weapon. But he would probably also be making the argument that Israel shouldn't be having a nuclear weapon. So I think he's saying, well, we should denuclearize. Unfortunately, the technology exists. You can't uninvent something. Johnson says, I fucking despise the UN. Hopefully we pull out. In my opinion, the U.S. move of the embassy to Jerusalem was Trump testing our allies. And I think he was trolling American liberals. So I think we're on different pages with that one, with the embassy moving. It was trolling American liberals and getting them to kind of lose a lot of their support. So that's it. We're not going to talk about Iran anymore for the rest of the segment because, honestly, I heard so much about it today. And, if you want to talk about it, you can ask somebody else because, I did address it. and I'm not going to talk about it anymore today, maybe a different time. We'll do this one later. 1 second. Let's get rid of this one. Get rid of. So, again, for those of you that joined late, tomorrow, or actually I guess it would be today, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time, we're going to be talking to 2 delegates to the DNC about the Mideast file. They can probably validate most of the stuff I've written. If you haven't read the Mideast file yet, you need to read the Mideast file. And you can find it over here. Okay, in the description. All right, is that good enough for you guys? You have to read it and share it and process it and tell people, you know, what the hell is going on with these news outlets that claiming that Bernie Sanders groups were infiltrated by Russia. Yeah, right. You know, I mean, here's the thing. I wanna take a poll of my listenership, and I don't think it's going to be a surprise. How many of you believe that the Russian government have been trying to hack into progressive movements in order to sway elections in the United States? You know, and I know most of you aren't progressives, but I mean, I'm asking that question intentionally that way. Do you believe that the Russian government is trying to hack progressive groups in order to influence elections in the USA? Okay, I'm just being, you know, that's it. Thank you for sharing on Steemit. By the way, Tom Hamilton, I'm not able to use Steemit at the moment, so I do want to get back on it in the next couple of days. But those damn keys, it's just once they're fucked up, they basically don't forgive you. You know, you try to you recover your account, then you recover it, then it doesn't work. You know, that's the only thing I don't like about Steemit. Hamilton says they don't need to hack anything. Our universities are doing a better job than anyone. Yeah, I mean, I think you know, I mean, it's time we stop blaming. I mean, there's one thing to criticize a country, and it's another. You know, and Russia is certainly not above criticism, but I mean, dear God, it's like unbelievable how much people will blame Russia. So let's talk about Eric Schneiderman, this idiot. So I found this. This is from a progressive source, the Huffington Post. You'll notice a lot of times I don't feature a lot of Breitbart stuff. I don't feature a lot of stuff from Ben Shapiro's Daily Wire too often. I don't feature, you know, InfoWars I actually like because it's entertaining, but I'm not going to feature one of their things on here because I like to pick out the flaws of the other side based on their own discussion points. And you know, this is from Zach Carter, and he says that Eric Schneiderman has always been a con man, and it says in November 2010, the Roosevelt Institute hosted an event in Washington taking a hard look at a strange phenomenon in U.S. housing. Banks, it appeared, were fabricating documents to pursue foreclosures under outrageous, chaotic circumstances, not accepting mortgage payments, miscalculating debts, rewriting loan terms without consulting homeowners, and trying to evict people who hadn't missed payments. The event wasn't a glitzy Washington spectacle. The guests of honors were stressed-out homeowners who showed up to detail their financial nightmares for a handful of journalists. Sitting in the back and nodding along calmly was Eric Schneiderman, a promising young politician who had just been elected Attorney General of New York. Afterward, he made the rounds shaking hands. This was an important issue, he told reporters. He wasn't a housing expert, but he didn't trust the banks. Something had to be done. It would soon become clear that his masterful performance was a total con. There is perhaps no reputation in American politics over the past generation more undeserved than the acclaim that has surrounded Schneiderman as a principled, tough on white-collar crime Democrat. After the Roosevelt Institute event, he pounded the microphones for months as a vocal holdout against President Barack Obama's $25 billion national mortgage settlement. Was that with, can somebody tell me in the chat if that was with AIG, if that's the one, or am I thinking of a different one? Once and for all, maybe it was with Maybe it was with Freddie Mac. You see here. Hamilton might know this one. Bull like a leopard. You don't like Daily Wire. I'm just not crazy about them. I think that they're kind of evangelical, and it's the same. I kind of treat them the same way that I treat some sources that are biased to the left, which is, I want somebody that I can actually, CNBC, for example, unfortunately, which is part of the NBC family, I like using because they have to be reliable on financial data, or else they really nobody's going to pay attention to them. If it's not like business magazines, I think are slightly more reliable. Like Bloomberg, I'll read, just because if they put out false information, then people are just not going to trust them. So that's why it has very little to do. I mean, Hamilton is talking about the Israel again. That's not why I don't trust them, but I don't care, because then you'll find another source and you'll say, oh, and I'll say, oh, but they rake Israel over the coals. Does that mean I don't read them? Of course I read them. I mean, it doesn't mean I'm going to share their opinion all the time, but I think that you have to go way across the spectrum for certain things, and that's why I brought in Sputnik today, just to see if they said something interesting. Schneiderman's story is hilarious. Talk about throwing stones while living in a glass house. Shapiro is extremely biased. Now, with that said, I agree with him often. Yeah, I don't like Shapiro's attitude on a number of issues. The most, yeah, he is very biased, and he's very self-entitled, and he's very intelligent. But the whole thing with Alex Jones last week, which I don't totally understand, with Kanye West. Yeah, that's him being a snob and talking, what do they call it? Gatekeeping with conservatism. And, I think at a certain point in time, you have to say to Shapiro, it's like, mind your own fucking business. People yeah, that's my attitude with Ben Shapiro. I'll tell you another thing about him before I'm going to ask Tom Hamilton the question again. Is the $25 billion settlement that they were referring to in the article, does that relate to Freddie Mac, AIG? Which one is it? Because I don't remember which one it is. So the other thing I don't like about Ben Shapiro is that he's always talking about how fantastic of a life he has, and he can't relate to other people who don't have it that well. And he's talking about how, the reason that I have such a good life is because, and a good home life is because I picked a woman I picked a woman who's completely, the type of person that is perfect for me or whatever. Well, there's a lot of people who get divorced 4 or 5 times, and they thought that they found the right, man or woman, depending who you're talking about, and they're wrong. And that's Ben Shapiro is full of it with that. He's like, oh, the reason is that you didn't pick the type of person that fits you correctly. Oh, no shit. I mean, and then he also neglects to mention certain divorces are because, for example, the wife gets beaten over the face or something, or the children hate the children ruin the marriage or something. That's kind of why Shapiro does. I don't understand why he always talks about stuff like that. I think a more realistic person to talk about, actual social issues. And, I know I'm being kind of a shill here, but Jordan Peterson, I think, is much more, because he is a clinical psychologist. So he deals with people's problems all the time. Why Ben Shapiro? You have, who's another person? Who's been through a bunch of divorces. I'm just saying, you know, Ben Shapiro, some people treat him like the golden boy. I'm just saying that the certain points of time, it's just annoying. You know, I'm just tired of the guy. You know, stay in your lane, buddy. Yeah, I don't know if you guys agree with me on that, but that's the way I feel. Anyway, no, back to the article. Then in January 2012, Schneiderman got his payoff. Not a better mortgage deal, but a big night in the spotlight. Obama invited Schneiderman to be a guest at the State of the Union address, where the president announced him as the leader of a new federal and state government task force prosecuting the fraud at the heart of the 2008 financial crisis. In this role, Schneiderman issued a grand total of 0 criminal subpoenas against U.S. financiers. If you want to know why nobody went to prison for wrecking the global economy in 2008, the answer in no small part is Schneiderman. Monday's gut-wrenching expose of his history of alleged physical abuse and psychological manipulation in his romantic life is a particularly violent, misogynist rendition of behavior he demonstrated in his professional life. He toyed with and misled the American public about his white-collar crime work for years and generally got away with it. Though his record against the rich and powerful is profoundly unimpressive, Schneiderman consistently scored incredible press from mainstream and liberal outlets, nearly all of it based on bank fraud investigations that not only weren't turning out convictions, but weren't even trying to generate prosecutions. In 2012, the Nation hailed him as the right man at the right moment and the American prospect. So the Nation is, by the way, I think it's the most well-circulated socialist magazine in the U.S. And I think they are explicitly socialist. You know, Chris Hayes, who's on MSNBC, which is a massive corporate conglomerate owned by Comcast, but he's the editor of The Nation. I think he's the chief editor of it. What the fuck? Sorry, guys, I'm kind of expecting something. Oh. Yeah, there's some local bullshit, so. Okay, and the American Prospect heralded him as the man the banks fear most in a glowing cover story. New York Magazine named him a pillar of the more liberal than Obama left in a gushing 2013 profile, and Politico managed to twist the fact that he never seemed to actually do anything into a virtue, describing him as a low-key champion of methodical behind-the-scenes work who showed a lack of interest in capitalizing on the office. Yeah, that's kind of strange. I don't know what the hell that even means. It's like you're praising somebody for not performing at work, for actually going to work and not doing anything. That's literally how it is. After Donald Trump was elected president, New York Magazine again sang Schneiderman's praises, and Politico called him the leader of the anti-Trump resistance. In fairness, Schneiderman has been just as effective against Trump as against Wall Street. So that's a backhanded insult, because he's saying he hasn't been effective against Wall Street. Schneiderman built his reputation by holding press conferences and inking splashy settlements with banks that added up to much less than their headlines suggested. He cut deals with J.P. Morgan Chase, Bank of America, Citigroup, and Goldman Sachs that seemed to be worth over $41 billion to taxpayers, but translated into only about $11.5 billion after various tax breaks, allowances, and loopholes were considered, as David Dayen, who chronicled the ugly history of Schneiderman and the foreclosure fraud debacle in his book Chain of Title, explained in the New Republic, which is a little more mainstream of a left-wing newspaper. I think the New Republic could probably be described as, mainstream liberal. And Schneiderman proceeded to stand by as big banks racked up an astounding array of federal post-crisis regulatory violations that mysteriously never seemed to run afoul of state criminal law. All politicians stretch the truth. Every ambitious office holder is guilty of chasing microphones, but it was a special brand of fraud to build his career by convincing the world that he was a champion of the very cause he was working to undermine. His hypocrisy is epic, one of his accusers, former girlfriend Michelle Manning Barish, told The New Yorker. He's fooled so many people. She was talking about his support for the Me Too movement and other feminist causes, but she might as well have been describing his bank-busting persona. But Democrats couldn't let themselves see the fraud for what it was. He was the top prosecutor in New York, and no bankers had gone to prison. But people still clung to the belief that he was the man the media said he was. So much so that friends of one alleged victim of his abuse even counseled her to keep the story to herself, arguing that Schneiderman was too valuable a politician for the Democrats to lose, according to the New Yorker. Schneiderman resigned Monday night, just hours after the New Yorker story came out. The Democratic Party didn't lose a champion of anything. So Zach Carter, I think, is a little more of an unaffiliated progressive. I think he is in H.A. Goodman's orbit. So, you know, welcome, Mega Man. I can't believe, yeah, it is late. So I'm sorry, guys, but you know, I was actually working on some stuff earlier this evening. One of them is for next week. There's a stream next Tuesday, probably with Soon Fei-Yang about Richard Wolff. And then there's another one tomorrow or actually today at 3:30 Eastern time on what's it called? On the DNC. No, we're not going to talk about Iran again. Fuck Iran. I don't care anymore. You know, I'll tell you why I don't care about Iran. Just my stupid opinion is going to laugh at this. I actually had an order of poutine today from you know, a place down the street, and I'm pretty confident I'm going to die of cardiac arrest before we actually get nuked. So I'm not really in the same boat as you guys worrying about nuclear war. So yeah, I don't care about Iran, and you know, you guys can. I guess I'll see you 5 minutes later. And then it's really true. I ate that crap, and it was like, yeah, this might actually kill me. And I have actually very low cholesterol. I think this might be more cholesterol than everything I've eaten combined in my entire life. Yeah, but it was pretty good. It was pretty good. Adrian's in the chat. Please subscribe to his channel, by the way, too, if you want more news about Canada. Interesting stuff. With the debates yesterday, I did get to listen to a little of it. Wasn't entirely familiar with what's going on. So that'll you know, before we segue into what's happening in Ohio, you know, mentioning, you know, speaking of local issues, I do want to talk about the sentiment expressed in that article, which is, you know, the whole thing with this sexual harassment or I think it was sexual battery that they were talking about with Eric Schneiderman. You know, that you can still debate. There's still, in my opinion, there's still the presumption of innocence. Even if you hate this guy, you still have to open up the possibility that this could be a giant crock of shit and he could be innocent, right? Because, I mean, at least in the country I grew up in, there's the presumption of innocence. It's the same type of standard that I applied to, you know, Al Franken, who I think is a jerk off. I did grow up liking his comedy, but, you know, the guy's totally turned into garbage. Michael Eric Dyson. No, that wasn't him. It was Tavis Smiley. For some reason, I get the two confused because they're always on the same shows together. Usually, Tavis Smiley will have Michael Eric Dyson on his show. So Tavis Smiley is an NPR host, and you know, the guy's a good presenter, and he's a leftist. But you know, when those allegations came out against him, there just wasn't any evidence against him. It just seemed like it was concocted bullshit. And Roy Moore, of course, I think, you know, with the passage of a few months, nobody seems to care what happened with that case. And people knew at the time, the Washington Post people knew, oh, we'll never be able to substantiate everything that happened. So I'm you know, with the Eric Schneiderman stuff, you know, the whole thing about sexual battery or whatever, it sounds awful. It sounds like the guy was a creep, but we still can't know for sure that he was a creep because we don't know all the facts at hand. And, you know, maybe there's some evidence. Maybe there's some text messages or something. But, you know, I personally, I think it's become dangerous the way people obsess over those sexual allegations and things like that with various people without evidence. You know, once evidence comes out, then you can assess that. It's the same thing. Not to bring it up again, but the same way that I relate to what Netanyahu revealed on that stage. You have all these friggin' CDs and these binders on a fucking shelf, but we can't actually read it. We can't read it because we don't have access, and we can't read it because we don't read Persian. So I'm sorry, but I don't. I wait for. I have come to be skeptical of so many things, and I can't. I just can't. I can't believe things just because people tell me them. And I try to be consistent with that. Sometimes I fail too. I think all of us fail at that. But with this sexual harassment stuff, I think he's entitled to the presumption of innocence. What he's not entitled to, and what this progressive guy, by the way, is pointing out, is that he's full of crap. And a lot of these politicians, they build up these reputations for being guardians of the public trust, and it's built on nothing. In reality, if you look at the guy's record, these banks are able to arrive at favorable settlements with him, and the consumer is not served by those. And at the end of the day, that's why I consider myself more of a libertarian on financial issues, a capitalist, somebody who believes in less government regulation, because they built up all this regulation and all these rules and the Dodd-Frank and all that bullshit. Ultimately, if you don't have the people who are prepared and willing to enforce those rules, and they don't mean anything, and then if you enforce them too stringently, well, then you have capital flight. Then those people, those companies, will take more and more of their assets to a country like Seychelles or the Caymans. They'll take them to Bermuda. They'll take them to countries that won't hassle them. So I'm prepared to have more competition and make things less of a tight game. That's the way I think. Okay, you guys can believe in regulation if you want. I don't think too many of you do, but that's the bullshit of being one of these big city white collar crime prosecutors. They don't necessarily prosecute a lot of white collar crime, and we waste a lot of money on this crap, and don't get much out of it. So that's my attitude towards it. I think that's the main story for Eric Schneiderman, and people are missing the point. They're looking at the sexual allegations are tough, and you can't ignore it, but you also can't believe it without hearing the evidence. So I think the man is entitled to at least his day in court if these are crimes, but let's not rush to judgment. Next issue. Primary elections happened today. We had Richard Cordry. He won here in Ohio. Here's the Politico spread. This for West Virginia. So that was another big issue over here. So people were thinking, I was talking for the past few weeks that the only hope for the progressive left in the state of Ohio, in my opinion, was Dennis Kucinich. Unfortunately, he got just obliterated across the state. He didn't win a single county, including Cuyahoga County, where I live, which is over here. See that? He still lost by a good 14% to Kucinich. Okay? Or to Cordry. He lost by a good 14%. In some parts of the state, he got, Hamilton County, he didn't do terribly well. Oh, that's Clermont. Hamilton County is, this one. He just got curb stomped. Let me see here. Where's Franklin County? I'm looking basically illiterate here. Delaware, Morrow. I'm wondering if there's even people in some of these counties. Here we go. This is Franklin County. This is where Columbus is. Yeah, these are the important counties to win, and he didn't win any of the three of them. Up here is Lucas County, which is a huge Union stronghold. Dennis Kucinich still lost by almost 46%. You know, it's unfortunate for progressives that they actually don't have, you know, that people just don't support them, and for them this. I don't know how to otherwise say this, because many of you maybe you don't care because, like me, you're not a progressive. I'm much more to the libertarian side, and in many cases the conservative side. And you know, I believe in civil liberties and stuff like that. I think progressives are increasingly ignoring those things. Dennis Kucinich is an exception to that rule. I think he does believe in civil liberties, but you know, the issue here is that the Democratic Party in Ohio has been basically in decay since 2010. They lost all of the statewide offices that were up for ballot that year. That means Attorney General, Governor, and Secretary of State, Auditor. I think, yeah, those are the big 4 and 5. Yeah, Auditor, Attorney General, Governor, and Secretary of State. So they lost all 4 of those in 2010, and they just have been destroyed ever since. And the reason that they've never recovered is, first of all, because the reason that they lost the first time was because of a huge corruption scandal in northeastern Ohio. Now, okay, you would have thought that that would have led to a clearing of house on the state level, because there are people who are linked to that scandal on the state level. But no, the fact of the matter is that you know, Ted Strickland, who was our last Democratic governor here in Ohio, and he was a one-term governor. He lost because he was just awful. He couldn't do anything. When he got defeated, the Democrats never really did the introspection to look at the people in the grassroots movements and say, who are the people who are going to bring progressivism back to the public, you know, the public discussion, the public discourse. And they just ignored that aspect. You know, at the time, Occupy Wall Street was going on. The Democrats rejected that movement. They were because they were all for, you know, benefit from Wall Street. That would have been their movement. I mean, they were just accepting corporate money all the time. You know, they were Republican light. And you might laugh at progressives for many things, but they're right in saying that the Democratic Party in many cases is you know, they're a corporate whorehouse. So then in 2014, they nominated this guy. His name was Ed Fitzgerald, who was just a moron. And he was famous because he got caught, I think, in 2012. He was mayor of one of the suburbs here. He got caught making out with this Irish girl who was a guest here for some crap that was a conference or something. He was making out with her in the back of a car in a factory parking lot, and the cops came and they're like, "What the fuck are you doing here?" And he's like, "Oh, you know, just you know, I was asking her, you know, maybe you can recommend some you know, some good shades for my tie or something." You know, that was basically his type of excuse. "Oh, we got lost and we were in this parking lot trying to find directions." Well, I mean, why were you all the way in the back of the parking lot where nobody can see you? So that was the big problem. That was one of the most famous issues with him. He also, Ed Fitzgerald, the guy I'm talking about, who was the county executive here, he got caught driving without a license. He got caught. He was also one of the people that was not indicted but was part of the corruption scandal here. So, and I'll show you the guy's face, you know. Ed Fitzgerald. So, yeah, this is the guy. And looking at him, I mean, he doesn't look like a clown, but he was. Another thing he did, if you sent a document to his office, so he was the county executive, and you know Fitzgerald is an Irish name, and I guess Fitz is like a prefix within the name, and so it actually means like I think if your name is like Fitzsimmons or Fitzgerald, it means that you're the bastard son of Gerald or whatever in Gaelic. But he took it seriously, and he's like, if you send a document to me that does not have the G capitalized in Fitzgerald, it's not valid. You know, and you can go fuck yourself. So people were just laughing at him behind his back. He was a total joke, and I think he got destroyed. It was like 2-1, and that was John Kasich, who I've never been a fan of. Pinochet says, when does the West Virginia vote primary? They had it today. That crazy guy lost. Yep. So, I mean, that's how it's been in Ohio since 2010. And so we don't have a choice, really, between a Democrat and Republican Party. We actually have a crappy Republican Party led by John Kasich and now Mike DeWine. And that was the other race. There was the Republican ballot. I actually voted for Mary Taylor, who did, you know, reasonably well compared to Dennis Kucinich, but she was not going to win. And you know, a lot of people on the right wing of the party were backing her, especially Cruz. I think even Rand Paul backed her for some reason. I mean, she wasn't amazing, but she was better than Mike DeWine, to be honest with you. But you know, it's like saying, you know, it's like saying, you know, Aquafresh is better than Colgate toothpaste. I mean, it's basically, I mean, you're just trying to clean your fucking teeth. There's really no advantage of one over the other in terms of, you know, a certain element that one's missing entirely that the other one has. Except actually, by the way, let me fix that. There was the issue that Mary Taylor is much less for gun control than Mike DeWine. And that's going to be a problem, and I think we're going to have to lobby very hard against Mike DeWine if he even becomes governor. I think he is going to win the governor's race. I think he is going to win, so I'm making that prediction now. I think he's going to win. I'm not going to guarantee it because the guy who defeated Kucinich is an idiot. But yeah, if he does win, yeah, the gun control people might have like an ally in here. So we're going to have to keep him accountable and, you know, lobby our state representatives and senators here to keep him on a tight leash and tell him to shut the fuck up and not screw with people's Second Amendment rights. And I'm not a gun nut. I just own, you know, a small number of guns, pretty small number of guns. But, you know, I think that it's important enough that you get these officials to lay off. I mean, it's not like legal gun crime is really a problem here. You know, I'm saying legal gun crime as in crimes committed with guns purchased legally. It doesn't really happen in Ohio. It doesn't happen in Vermont either. Vermont's also a pretty high gun ownership state. So, you know, the Senate race is Sherrod Brown, who's our senator here, ran unopposed, and that guy's an asshole. And his wife is a lying journalist who used to work for the local paper here. I also voted against the guy who ran here and won. This is Jim Renacci, who's a congressman. I think the guy's he's not really going to be a great senator if he wins, and he's going to need a lot of help to win anyway. It's not going to be easy to beat Sherrod Brown. So, you know, we're going to have to keep an eye on that one. It's not going to be an easy race. He was running against Mike Gibbons, who's the guy that I supported, who seemed a little better, and then Melissa Akeson, who was probably the most right-wing candidate, but didn't seem to really have a good campaign going. She seemed like really lackluster. So this Renacci guy is a bit of a shady character, and I think he could lose. So no, I'm not really feeling this. I think it's not going to be an easy day for us come November for Republicans. Except, I mean, the governor race, I think he's going to win. I'll tell you right now, Mike DeWine will probably win, and it probably won't mean that much because it's going to be basically a third term of John Kasich. Pinochet has to go. Yeah, have a good night, man. Thanks for tuning in. Jeffrey Allen Johnson here says, no concealed carry, lots of guns, and no one gets shot. Funny how that works. I mean, yeah, you said you live in Kansas or something. Yeah, I mean, if people are able to mind their own business and not rob each other, and I think you're an idiot if you try to rob somebody else with a legally purchased firearm. It usually works itself out. I mean, we're not trying. Let me fix this. I don't know about you guys. I'm not shooting for a perfect society. I'm shooting for a world where people don't fuck with me. And I think if everybody adopts that attitude, people just won't get fucked with as often as they do now, and it'll be better. And that's a pretty simple philosophy. West Virginia, by the way. So Joe Manchin he's running for re-election, and he won the primary. He just destroyed his progressive candidate, his progressive opponent, who is she's been on the Jimmy Dore show. That was to be expected, even though you would have expected him to lose something because he's been a disappointment to real Democrats. But no, he won very well. And in most of these counties, she really couldn't compete. The Republican primary, you see this Don Blankenship guy. He was a weirdo, and I'm kind of happy that he did lose, and we're better for it, because the guy would have been an embarrassment to any. I mean, he was like calling Mitch McConnell's wife like a China woman or something. You can hate her, but that's not a valid reason in this case. So yeah, he lost, and people were hyping it up because they thought, oh, it's possible this weirdo could win, and he did lose. So this guy is out of our hair now, and there were some rumors, oh, he's going to run as an independent. Well, nobody's going to vote for him then. People are going to vote for either Joe Manchin or the Republican guy, Patrick Morrisey. Let's see if there's anything here. There's a couple of House elections there. Did we have any House elections here? Senate, House. So this guy, Sam Ronan, is actually a former progressive. He is a progressive who was running for the Republican nomination because the Democrats were just not going to let him run because he was a Bernie bro. Let me see if my district is here. So most of these districts are really gerrymandered, so there's no point in anybody running. So Jim Jordan, District 4, is a good guy. I want him to win. You'd probably know him from the Russia investigation. If you can call it an investigation. This guy's an idiot. Bill Johnson. Who else is here? I really don't. Oh, here we go. Then you have Marsha Fudge, who's probably going to win easily. She's my congresswoman. The woman's you never see her anywhere. And you never will. She's basically invisible. So yeah, that was the House elections and the primary elections in Ohio. So Richard Cordray is he's gonna be Elizabeth Warren's bitch poodle. He's gonna try to run for governor here, and I'm predicting he's not gonna have a good time doing it. He's probably gonna lose. And I hope he's going to lose, because if he doesn't, this state's going to be a shithole. And I'll probably have to move to Michigan or something. Curacao faces a potential crisis from Venezuela Conoco Row. So, just so you know, I covered, I think, a week or 2 weeks ago that Venezuela arrested 2 Chevron employees because they wouldn't sell them the oil that they wanted for, or no. Why did they? I mean, you lose track of all these stories. Venezuela, Chevron, arrest. So there's been like even more developments. So Chevron evacuates Venezuela executives following staff arrests. So they had a contract dispute. So Venezuela says, "Oh, you don't want to sign this shitty contract with us? We're just going to arrest you." So, you know, those of you complaining about the Iran deal, well, at least we didn't arrest Iran. I mean, at least that, right? I mean, come on, throw us a bone here. We didn't arrest them. The arrests in a raid by national intelligence officers were the first at a foreign oil firm since Venezuela's government launched a purge last fall that has resulted in the detentions of more than 80 executives at PDVSA and business partners accused of corruption. The Chevron workers may face charges of treason for refusing to sign a supply contract for furnace parts drawn up by PDVSA executives. Reuters reported earlier this week. The workers balked at the high cost of the parts and a lack of competitive bids. So essentially what I think was being done was PDVSA drew up like a really high contract, and I think they were using it. They're using it as a means to you know, probably make money themselves off of the deal, and somebody was probably going to pay them out the back end. So, or this was a sting operation based on that. So Venezuela's foreign minister, Jorge Ariasa, linked the Chevron arrest to the government's anti-corruption probe for the first time on Wednesday. In our oil industry and in its relationships with other countries, there has been corruption, Ariasa said at a news conference at the United Nations headquarters in New York that was broadcast on Venezuela state television. The decisions of the prosecutor's office are based on, you know what, this really isn't a quick take anymore, is it? We've been going on too long. I'm going to have to retitle this an American Gladio. Sorry about that, but this wasn't intended to be very long. So anyway, in Curacao, which is in the Caribbean, you know, probably, I don't know, 80 miles away from Venezuela, because of that and because of a further dispute that's going on with Conoco Philips, which is another massive oil conglomerate around the world. So Conoco Philips sued PDVSA in Venezuela. I think they got a $2 billion reward that PDVSA is refusing to pay. So it looks like Curacao, which is where, you know, some of the refineries are located, Curacao might actually have to like confiscate some of PDVSA's assets, and if they're not able to use Curacao and Bonaire, which is another Dutch possession in the Caribbean near Venezuela, yeah, it's going to really suck for Venezuela because they won't have where to refine their oil, and it says Conoco Philips has said it has sought to resolve issues caused by its efforts to collect the arbitration award. The arbitration award was for some sort of issue that PDVSA had screwed them like a couple years ago or something. We have been in touch with the local officials and are working to address their concerns, spokesman Darren Bodo said. As we said previously, we will work with the community and local authorities to address issues that may arise as a result of enforcement actions. PDVSA did not immediately respond to an email seeking comment. A small island off the coast of Venezuela, Curacao is a constituent country within the Kingdom of the Netherlands with a vibrant tourism industry and deep-water ports used by the oil industry. That, by the way, that's why I picked that thumbnail, because they had that cool seascape over, or not seascape, but like coastline, with the fluorescent tinted houses and everything. During the oil boom years, Venezuelans flooded the island to shop and vacation, but the OPEC nation's calamitous economic decline in recent years has turned Curacao and neighboring islands into havens for migrants seeking escape from hunger and disease. Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty shitty. Um, and indeed, this is from Reuters. PDVSA diverts crude tanker from Curacao. So this was after that. So PDVSA was like, "Oh shit, they're coming to take our stuff." So this is from the refinery. This photo over here, and it looks like they were afraid that their ships would be seized as well. So they told them, "Get the hell out of there and come over to." So they had to relocate their ships to Venezuela and Cuba. So now Venezuela's oil industry is effectively crippled, if you really think about it, because they can't refine their own oil for export, and now it's basically useless, and the country's not going to have any way to earn any money. So congratulations, guys. So that's about it. Bold, quick take, director's cut. Yeah, I guess that's what it is. I mean, I'm sorry, but we went way too long today. Hamilton says, I was just in Aruba / Curacao. Locals aren't too fond of Maduro. They keep voting for bigger government themselves. Sigh. Well, I mean, yeah, they don't realize that, and maybe they won't go to the extreme that Maduro did, but the more of these welfare programs people embrace, or more of these state control and coercion mechanisms that there are, yeah, I mean that's how a lot of these mass scale human tragedies happen, and that Venezuela already qualifies as one. And Arjun has talked about the way some of that has worked under Indira Gandhi over in India. And I personally, I think, if nothing else, the welfare state is one problem, and then there's the whole issue of the coercive state and limiting civil liberties. So if these people who propose socialist programs, they don't have a way to guarantee civil liberties, they have to be told, your beliefs are meaningless. If you can't guarantee civil liberties under the system you intend to implement, then there's no point in listening to you. That's about it. Tune in today, 3:30 p.m. We're going to be talking about the Mattis file. And, I have other shit to do, too. So next Monday, possibly going to have another interview with another guest that we've had before. When it's confirmed, I'll announce it because I'm really excited about it. And thanks for sticking around, guys. I know it was very late, for me at least, but a few things that I just wanted to talk about. Good night.